So some people ask me, why, Nate, have you been not talking about the rest of the MPD report? You talked about Switch sales for December, you talked about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but there's a lot more data here. And the reason I haven't talked about it is just because I needed some time to dissect it all. A lot of this information comes from MPD analyst Matt Piscatella, who tweeted out a whole bunch of this stuff and also has his own analysis video that does a little bit of a deeper dive, but it goes into a lot of different things, not just Nintendo. So let's just get into the good stuff, including the fact that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at the end of 2018 has now become the second best-selling racing game of all time. The best-selling racing game of all time is actually Mario Kart Wii. So there's a chance, I don't know how big it is, but there is a chance that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe could become the best-selling one of all time. Now, it might already be that if you include the Wii U sales into the mix, because after all, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a port of the Wii U version of the game, and I think that's what's crazy about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, is that it became the second best-selling racing game of all time while being a port. Pretty astonishing, and it might be one of the few ports to exist out there to ever hold such a high honor in terms of sales. But that's not all the data we have. Let's get right into his little Twitter thread on this information. So as you see here, here's his tweet about Mario Kart 8 finishing as the second best-selling racing game of all time. But if you scroll down further, you'll see some other interesting information. For example, the very next tweet, it says, for the first time since 2009, Nintendo is the highest software revenue generating publisher of the year. If you remember, 2009 was one of the last peak years of the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo DS. Moving on, he talks about how, hardware spending increased 8% to $5.1 billion. Console hardware sales were driven by the PlayStation 4, plug-and-play devices, and the Switch and Xbox One experiencing year-on-year gains. Nintendo Switch generated the highest December month hardware dollar sales for a single platform since the Nintendo Wii in December of 2009. Again, one of the last peak years of Wii, and they achieved the highest December unit sales for a single platform since December of 2010. Nintendo Switch ends 2018 as the year's best-selling hardware platform in both units and dollars. So we talked a little about units, but they actually also made the most amount of money as well for their platform in December. Annual unit and dollar sales on the Nintendo Switch are the highest annual total for any hardware platform since the PlayStation 4 in 2015. Again, that was the peak year for PlayStation 4. Moving on, console hardware unit dollars reach their highest annual totals since 2009. Again, peak years of Wii. Total spending of the ACC and GC grew 29% in 2018 versus YA to an all-time high of $1 billion. Gamepad spending gains were a primary driver of the increase. The Nintendo Switch Pro Controller was the month's best-selling accessory in dollar sales. So it didn't sell the most in terms of units, but it made the most amount of money. Annual spending on accessories and game cards increased 33% in 2018 when compared to 2017 to $4.5 billion. This is an all-time high. Growth in gamepad, headset/headphone sales drove gains. Moving on, he talks a little bit about how the PlayStation 4 DualShock 4 Black and the Switch Pro Controller and the Xbox One S wireless controller White were the three best-selling accessories of 2018 in terms of dollars. Then it goes into some charts here. Well, the top 10 selling software per game in 2018. For Xbox, it's not going to be a surprise to see a ton of third-party games. From everything from Call of Duty and Red Dead and Madden, all the way down to things like Forza and Battlefield 5. Stuff like that, Monster Hunter World on there. Again, Xbox does not have a ton of exclusives coming out lately, so seeing a ton of third-party games on here isn't a big surprise. I think Forza is actually the only exclusive on this entire list. For PlayStation 4, Red Dead Redemption 2 was actually the top seller in 2018, but you do see some exclusives on here, like Marvel Spider-Man at number 3, God of War at number 4. So I guess they have, one extra exclusive over Microsoft, but both of the exclusives sold in the top 5 for PlayStation 4 last year, which was probably a big driver for sales. Otherwise, you see a bunch of third-party games, which is pretty par for the course for a PlayStation platform. Then you get to the Nintendo Switch. This is where it's interesting because not a single third-party game cracks the list. It's actually kind of looking at these three platforms, you kind of see the major differences between Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. Remember how I made that video that a lot of people disliked about how Nintendo Switch doesn't need AAA third-party support, or doesn't need full AAA third-party support is really what I meant, where they don't need the Red Deads and all that of the world. It would be nice to have them, and I want them, and it would help. But Switch is massively successful without them. You want to know how I can determine that Nintendo gamers buy Nintendo platforms, or that Switch owners bought the platform for Switch games? Well, the top 10 selling games on Switch last year, look at that publisher list. It's all Nintendo. It goes Smash, Mario Kart 8, Super Mario Odyssey, Zelda, Super Mario Party, Let's Go Pikachu, then Let's Go Eevee, Splatoon 2, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, and Kirby Star Allies. Won't be surprised if 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 are all Nintendo games too, because third-party games, they sell on Switch, but they don't necessarily outsell Nintendo's games by a long shot. So it's really interesting because you see Xbox One and PlayStation 4 heavily rely on that multi-platform support with the Maddens and the NBA 2K. I mean, NBA 2K was on Switch, so like there's one we can directly compare. NBA 2K19 was top 10 on Xbox One. NBA 2K19 was top 10 on PlayStation 4. NBA 2K19 wasn't top 10 on Switch. That doesn't mean it didn't sell well, but it's clearly not a driving factor for Switch sales on the whole. Again, I know there's people out there that specifically bought a Switch to play these games on the go. That's fine. I know that crowd exists, but that crowd is very minuscule compared to the crowd that's buying these top 10 games on Switch. So it's interesting just looking at the industry in this kind of bubble where you're looking at Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Switch in terms of what games are really driving the platform. And for Nintendo, I mean, if it's not clear, it's all Nintendo games. This is not like a top 10 selling list of just Nintendo published games. This is the top 10 selling list in the United States of just all games that released on Switch, in a physical form, by the way. NPD only tracks physical sales for Switch. So this wouldn't include, like, if there was an indie gem that sold a few million, this wouldn't include one of those. For 3DS, no surprise, again, another platform with a bunch of Nintendo published games: Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, Mario Kart 7, Super Smash Bros., Detective Pikachu, getting up there. 3D Land, man, Mario 3D Land's still pushing it. Minecraft, I guess, Nintendo published that. That would be considered a third-party game, though, because that is owned by Microsoft. So there you go. They do have one third-party game cracking that list. Luigi's Mansion, Mario Party, the Top 100, and Super Mario Maker. So still mostly Nintendo, but hey, there is a third-party site in here in Minecraft. Almost surprised that Minecraft on Switch didn't maybe get up there a bit, because I know that's been consistently a top seller, but I think on Switch it's been a lot of digital sales versus physical. So that's really the gist of it. I mean, if you go up here, he's got even more data. This is about the entire industry, total sales, total dollars, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, this is some really interesting stuff, and I love looking at all this data and just extrapolating what can we get from this data. And I think some of the biggest things we can get is, one, the Switch is starting to do Nintendo Wii-like numbers, not just in terms of unit sales, but software sales as well. The Wii was Nintendo's best generation ever. Between the Wii and DS combined, there's been no one in the video game industry has ever done better than the Wii and DS era combined. But if we just look at Wii on its own, Switch is like right there, starting to do Wii numbers from 2009. Now, of course, 2009 was kind of the tail end of Wii, right? Like that was, the peak years were obviously launch year, 2006, and 2007, 2008 were massive, and 2009 was like the last massive year for Wii, and then it really dipped down in 2010. But the big thing here is that Switch is on the rise. So like, even though it did 2009 numbers in 2018, at least towards the end of the year, this next upcoming year could be 2007, 2008 numbers, because just look at the software lineup and look at the third-party support, just look at what Nintendo's doing. It's entirely possible that things aren't just, like, this isn't the peak. It's going to keep going higher and higher. So things are looking up for Switch is basically what I'm saying. And it's interesting because the NPD does report that Xbox itself actually grew year on year, whereas, PlayStation 4 is, might have plateaued and is starting, to move downward as they get, into the PlayStation 5 announcement probably coming coming this year, if not next year for sure. Xbox itself is kind of recovering a bit and starting to grow year on year. And obviously, I think there's more room for Xbox to grow compared to PlayStation. PlayStation platforms usually sell around 100 million or more, and that's about where PlayStation 4 is right now. Xbox, meanwhile, is kind of underselling what it had done in the Xbox 360 days, so it has room to actually continue to grow. And it would be interesting to see if Microsoft actually releases their next generation platform later than Sony does. One, to see what Sony's going to do so they know what kind of power they should maybe be targeting, what kind of price ranges they should target, and maybe because the Xbox One X is still going to be viable for a few more years potentially. So, I mean, I certainly hope so. I just got one for my parents got me one for Christmas, so I'm really hoping it's going to be viable for a few more years. But yeah, it's going to be fun watching what happens here in 2019 with this information and these sales. Now remember, this is just for the United States. This isn't worldwide numbers. This isn't Nintendo's fiscal year, which includes last year and 3 months of this year. So there's a lot more data to come, and January 31st is going to give us Nintendo's official numbers. We're finally going to know what are the Switch sales worldwide, how are all Nintendo games doing worldwide instead of these individual regions. But things are looking up, and I honestly gotta say, I was shocked. And the most shocking thing is obviously something that's in the headline, and that's that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the second best-selling racing game of all time as a port. It's crazy to me. Like, if you told me Mario Kart 9, sure, but like Mario Kart 9's not out. We're talking about a port of a Wii U game. Shows you how few of people were actually owning the Wii U for this to occur. But it's cool. I'm glad that people are enjoying Switch. I'm glad that in spite of what looked like a weak 2018 software-wise, Nintendo's evergreen titles, you looked at that top 10 list, so many 2017 games on that list. I mean, you don't even see Octopath Traveler crack that list, and that was an excellent game last year. Why? Because Nintendo's titles are so evergreen. They are so different than all the other competitors out there. Their titles just continue to sell and sell and sell, and they just don't stop selling. People that buy new Switches keep buying that back catalog, and you wonder why Nintendo doesn't really drop their prices from $60 until, I don't know, 8 years later, or however long it takes them to do the Nintendo Selects version of them. Like, it's crazy to me, but again, people keep buying the games, so if they're going to keep buying them, why would you lower the price? Nintendo's very business savvy in that way, and right now they're the only platform holder that really can do that. It's interesting seeing how Nintendo operates in that bubble where, look, they're massively successful right now, and they're keeping their games really high priced, and people just keep buying them. I mean, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still $60 as a port from a Wii U game, and it's almost 2 years old, and it's still $60, and it's still selling. And it might become the best-selling game in the entire franchise, let alone the entire racing genre, but when it's all said and done. This is just, wow, my mind is being blown. This is some really cool stuff, so thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this look at the rest of the MPD data that I've been kind of digesting over the past day or so. I am Nathaniel Rovajans from Nintendo Prime, and we are giving away a Nintendo Switch Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Bundle. Yes, that bundle that released last year in November, that's nearly impossible to find today without going to the secondhand market. We are giving one of those away. All you have to do is go to the gleam.io link down in the description. When we hit 50,000 subscribers, we will be announcing the winner of that giveaway. I can't wait to get that sent out to someone. That's something that I'm looking forward to and pretty excited about. And I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content, and I'll catch every single one of you in the next video.